She wasn't supposed to be outside. Not at 2 o'clock in the morning. Not barefoot. Not bleeding. And yet, the front doorstep says she was, which means something already went wrong before anyone even realized she was gone. At first glance, this looks like a kidnapping. An elderly woman, 84 years old, taken from her home in the middle of the night. No shoes, pajamas, no medication, no warning, just gone. But if you listen closely to what Savannah actually said, something doesn't line up. Her mother could barely walk. On a good day, she could make it to the mailbox. Most days, not even that. So ask yourself this: how does someone like that end up outside, standing long enough to leave blood on the front doorstep? That's not a detail. That's a contradiction. And in cases like this, contradictions are where the truth hides. Now let's slow this down, because the setting matters more than people think. Nancy Guthrie wasn't just vulnerable, she was predictable. She lived alone. She had limited mobility. She followed routines. And most importantly, she wasn't someone who could wander off. That assumption was dismissed almost immediately by the people closest to her. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a medical episode where she somehow walked away unnoticed. Something happened inside that house, and the house itself is already telling a strange story. The back door was found propped open, not broken, not forced, just held open. At the same time, there was blood on the front doorstep. So now you have two separate points of interest: an open entry in the back and evidence of movement in the front. Those two things should connect cleanly. But they don't, because if someone entered through the back, why leave it open? And if they exited through the front, why is the only visible struggle happening there? You see the problem. The scene isn't chaotic, it's selective. Almost like different parts of the house were being used for different roles. And then there's one more detail that quietly complicates everything. The ring camera had been removed. Not damaged, not ignored, removed. That's not panic. That's awareness. And once you accept that, you have to accept something else, too. Whoever did this didn't just act, they understood the environment. Now this is where the investigation actually begins. Not with what we see, but with what doesn't quite make sense. Take the back door. At first, it feels simple. Entry point. Someone comes in quietly, avoids attention, and moves through the house. But the door wasn't just open, it was propped open. That's a very different decision, because propping a door means you expect movement, in and out, more than once, or more than one person. Thought nin thi bin thuang. But if you look closer, a single intruder doesn't need a door held open. They open it, they close it, they leave. Leaving it open suggests timing, someone else arriving, or someone else already inside. And suddenly, this stops looking like a one-person job. Now look at the front doorstep. There are blood patterns there, not just random drops, multiple drips in one area. That matters, because dripping blood in one spot doesn't come from running. It comes from stopping, standing, pausing, being held in place, which tells you something uncomfortable. She wasn't immediately dragged out. She was upright, moving slowly, possibly being assisted or controlled. And then there's the detail everyone keeps repeating, but no one really questions. She had no shoes, no glasses, possibly no hearing aids. On the surface, that sounds like urgency, like someone rushed in and took her without giving her time. But think about the effect. An elderly woman, in pain, barefoot, unable to see clearly, unable to hear properly. That's not just vulnerability. That's total disorientation. Which raises a different possibility. What if the goal wasn't speed? What if the goal was control? Because when you put these pieces together, a pattern starts to form. The open back door, the controlled movement at the front, the condition she was taken in. This wasn't random. This was structured. And once you see that, you have to ask a harder question. If this was planned, then what part of it are we still misunderstanding? Now the pressure starts to build, because the more details we stack together, the less this feels like a clean operation. It starts to feel inconsistent, not because there aren't answers, but because there are too many that don't agree with each other. Not because the house was empty, not because she was an easy target, not because this was a simple break-in, but because every step we look at suggests something more deliberate. The back door is open, still open when family arrives. That means no one bothered to close it on the way out, which sounds like haste. But that doesn't match the rest of the scene, because removing a ring camera takes time. Positioning someone, moving them slowly, leaving controlled blood patterns, takes time. So which is it? Were they rushing or were they careful? They can't be both. And then there's the movement itself. She doesn't walk well. We know that. So getting her from inside the house to the front doorstep is not fast. It's slow. It's difficult. It requires handling. Which means whoever did this stayed longer than they should have. Now layer in another detail. The front door shows blood, but no forced entry. The back door is open, but no visible struggle there. So the violence, or at least the injury, happens near the exit, not at the point of entry. That's important, because it suggests the situation changed. Something shifted. Something didn't go exactly as planned. And this is where the tension really comes from. Because the scene is not chaotic. It's controlled until it isn't. The more you look at it, the more it feels like this. They knew how to get in. They knew what to disable. They knew how to move her. But something disrupted the sequence. And when a controlled plan starts to break, that's when mistakes happen. That's when evidence appears. That's when the truth leaks out. So now the question isn't just who did this. It's this. At what exact moment did things stop going according to plan? Up to this point, everything seems to point in one direction. A planned entry, a controlled removal, possibly more than one person. That's what we thought. But if you go back and look again, something starts to shift. Before, we assumed the open back door meant coordination. Multiple people, movement in and out, a structured entry. But if you look at it differently, a door propped open doesn't just allow entry. It allows escape, fast escape. No delay, no turning handles, no noise. Which means that detail we thought showed control might actually reveal fear. And the front doorstep, we treated the blood as evidence of slow movement, of control, of someone guiding her out carefully. But if you reframe it, multiple drips in one spot could also mean hesitation, resistance, or even confusion. Not necessarily planned movement, but a moment where something went wrong. And then there's the condition she was taken in. No shoes, pajamas, possibly without hearing aids or glasses. We said that meant control. But look again. It could also mean they didn't give her time. Not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't. So now the picture changes. Before we thought this was precise, calculated, executed smoothly. But if you look at these same details from another angle, it starts to feel rushed, interrupted, imperfect, and that creates a completely different interpretation. Before, we believed, they entered, they controlled the scene, they executed the plan. But if you look again, what if the plan didn't unfold the way they expected? What if something inside that house forced them to adapt? Because here's the truth that quietly emerges when you connect everything. The same details that suggest control also suggest instability, and that leads to a much more dangerous possibility. This wasn't just a planned act. It was a plan that started to break apart in real time. And this is the part people don't talk about enough, because it's not about evidence anymore. It's about what this felt like inside that house. An 84-year-old woman, in pain, barely able to walk, woken up in the middle of the night. No glasses, no hearing, no shoes. Imagine that moment, not understanding who was in your home, not understanding what they want, not even fully understanding what is happening to your own body. And somewhere in that confusion, she's being moved, slowly, step by step. You can hear it in Savannah's voice. Not just fear, not just grief, but something deeper, guilt. She questions whether this happened because of her visibility, because someone thought they could get money. And that thought alone is heavy enough to break a person. But here's what makes that emotion important to the investigation. Because when families speak, they don't just give facts. They reveal patterns. They reveal relationships. They reveal how well someone was known. And in this case, it's clear. Nancy Guthrie was not just a random target. She was understood. Her condition, her limitations, her routines. Which means this wasn't just about opportunity. It was about awareness. And that's where the emotional layer connects back to the logic. Because the more you understand how vulnerable she was, the harder it becomes to believe this was spontaneous. This wasn't just someone breaking in. This was someone who knew what they were walking into. And that realization changes everything. Because now the question isn't just what happened that night. It's this, who knew enough to make this possible? And this is where everything changes. Because one detail quietly rewrites the entire scene. There may not have been just one person. At first, that idea felt like speculation. But go back to the evidence. The back door, propped open. The front door, where she exits. 2 separate access points. 2 separate roles. And then there's something subtle. Someone approaching the front, appearing to look inside. Not forcing entry. Not breaking in. Waiting. Which only makes sense if someone else is already inside. And now the pieces start to align. One person enters through the back, prepares the environment, disables the camera, locates her. Another arrives at the front, not to break in, but to coordinate, to receive, to assist in getting her out. That explains the door. That explains the timing. That explains why movement inside the house doesn't match a single path. And more importantly, that explains why the scene feels divided, because it wasn't one continuous action. It was a sequence, shared between people. Before we kept asking, why leave the back door open? Why exit through the front? Why does the evidence feel split? Now the answer becomes much simpler. Because the roles were split. One inside, one outside. And once you accept that, you have to accept something even more serious. This wasn't just planned. It was coordinated, and coordinated actions don't happen randomly. They require communication, preparation, agreement, which means this wasn't a moment. It was a decision made before that night ever began. Now, if you follow that line of thinking all the way through, it leads you somewhere uncomfortable. Because a coordinated act raises one unavoidable question. How did they know? How did they know she would be there, alone? How did they know she couldn't move quickly? How did they know there was a camera and exactly where it was? You don't learn those things in a moment. You learn them over time. And this is where people start pointing fingers in the wrong direction. At the family, at the people closest to her, because it feels like the only explanation. But that's not how investigations work. Because knowledge doesn't only come from intimacy. It can come from observation, from routine exposure, from simply watching long enough. And think about the environment. A home, a neighborhood, a visible routine, someone going in and out, someone who walks slowly, someone who struggles. That's not hidden. That's visible to anyone paying attention. Now add one more layer. Public visibility. A family connected to media. A name that carries weight. And suddenly, a different possibility emerges. Not that this was personal, but that it was targeted. Not because of who she was, but because of what someone believed she represented. Money, leverage, opportunity. And that connects back to something else said early on. The idea of ransom, not confirmed, not proven, but suggested almost immediately. And that matters. Because people don't jump to that conclusion without a reason. So now the case shifts again. From random act, to informed decision, from opportunity, to intention. And once you see that, You realize this wasn't just about taking someone. It was about what they thought they could get from it. That was not a break-in at the wrong time. It was a decision made in advance. That was not the chaos of someone panicking. It was a sequence of actions, calculated, even if something later went off track. That was not a woman who simply disappeared. It was a woman being taken out of her own reality, step by step, by people who knew exactly what they were doing. But the most unsettling part isn't what we've seen. It's what we haven't. A door left open, a camera removed, a woman who could barely walk, somehow ending up outside. These are clues, but none of them tell the full story. And that is the true nature of this case. It's not a lack of information. It's information that doesn't fully connect. What we know is enough to tell us something is wrong, but not enough to show us everything. And when a story is only partially visible, the most dangerous part is always what remains unseen.